As you sit here, wherever you are, allow yourself to notice that this moment is already here. You do not have to create it. You do not have to improve it. It is simply here. Perhaps you become aware of the movement of the breath, an in-breath, an out-breath. There is a simple sense of being before any thought about your life, before any story about who you are. There is this presence here. You may notice that almost immediately the mind wants to come in and comment on this moment. It says, this is good, or this is boring, or I don't have time for this. The mind lives in commentary. It lives in comparison. It lives in past and future. But you are here. There is the mind, and there is the awareness that notices the mind. True freedom begins the moment you realize you are not the voice in your head. Just notice this now. You can hear thoughts. You can see them appear and disappear. So you cannot be what you can observe. You are not your thoughts. There is a deeper dimension in you that is simply aware. Let us stay with that for a few moments. You may find it helpful to feel the aliveness in your hands. You do not need to move them. Just sense from within a slight vibration, a tingling, a subtle energy field. This is the inner body. As you sense the inner body, thoughts may still arise. They are allowed to be there. You are not trying to get rid of them. You are simply shifting from being lost in them to being the space in which they appear. Notice the space that opens when you do not follow every thought, a little gap. In that gap, there is no problem. Your life situation may contain many challenges. But your life, which is this living presence now, is not a problem. Your life situation is not your life. The ego does not understand this. The ego lives entirely through identification with thought and form. It says, I am my story. I am my past. I am my opinion. As I am what happened to me. And because it believes it is these things, it continuously feels threatened. It feels incomplete. It feels not enough. So it argues with life. It says, this should not have happened. They should not be like that. I should be further ahead by now. Arguing with reality is the ego's favorite activity. You may notice in yourself how often there is this inner no to what is. A subtle resistance. A tension in the body. A thought that says, this moment is wrong. Whenever you sense this inner no, just notice it. Do not judge it. Do not make another story about it. Simply be aware of the resistance itself. In the light of awareness, resistance begins to soften. You do not have to force surrender. Surrender is already there, beneath the argument. Surrender is the recognition that this moment is as it is. Right now, this is how life appears. You may not like it. You may wish it were different. All of that can be noticed, but deeper than like or dislike is the simplicity of isness. This chair, this body, this breath, the sounds around you, all of it just being what it is. When you no longer argue with reality, it does not mean that you become passive. It does not mean that you never take action. It means that the starting point is no longer inner conflict. Action then flows, not from resistance, but from clarity. You still may say yes or no on the level of form. You may leave a situation or stay in it. But inwardly, there is a deep yes to this moment as it is. That is surrender. The ego cannot understand this. The ego thinks that if it stops resisting, everything will fall apart. It believes that its constant struggle is what keeps the world together. In truth, its constant struggle is what keeps your inner world in a state of tension. You may have noticed how tiring it is to always be mentally fighting what is. Notice in this moment if there is any subtle tension in the body, in the face, in the jaw, in the shoulders, in the stomach. These tensions are often the physical expression of arguing with life. As you bring awareness to these areas, you are not trying to fix them. You simply allow them to be as they are. They may relax, they may not, but you are learning to rest as awareness itself, not as the tension. The more you rest as awareness, the more the old layers of resistance begin to dissolve. This accumulated resistance is what I sometimes call the pain body. The pain body is the emotional residue of past experiences that were not fully accepted, not fully felt, not fully allowed. It is like a field of stored emotion within the body. At times, it becomes active. Something small happens. Someone says a few words, a look, a tone, and suddenly there is a disproportionate reaction, a wave of anger, a deep sadness, a strong hurt. You may recognize that the intensity is not really about the present event. The present has triggered the past. The pain body wants to feed. It feeds on drama. It feeds on arguments, on blame, on feeling wronged. It loves to be right about how wrong everything is. The ego loves to be right. You may notice how satisfying it can feel for the ego to say, "I told you so. I knew it. They always do this." For a brief moment, there is a sense of identity, reinforced by being right. But there is no peace in it. The pain body merges with the ego and uses the situation to create more suffering. If you are not aware, you are taken over. You say and do things that later you may regret. You feel trapped in the same patterns, and the ego says, "See, this is just how I am. This is just who they are." In that way, it keeps the story alive. Awakening begins when you notice this. When, even in the middle of reactivity, a small part of you remains aware. You may feel the surge of emotion in the body. You may hear the angry thoughts in the mind, and at the same time you know, this is the pain body, this is the ego in reaction. That simple recognition already creates space. You are not trying to stop the feeling. You are not suppressing it. You are allowing it to be felt as energy in the body while not believing the story it brings. You feel the raw sensation without feeding the narrative. In that awareness, the pain body cannot sustain itself for long. It may feel intense for a while. Then it subsides. What remains is a quiet presence. You have not added to the drama. You have not argued with what is. You have allowed the energy of the past to move through you and dissolve in the light of awareness. This is how suffering ends. Not all at once, but moment by moment, whenever you choose to be present instead of reactive. Let us come back to this moment now. Perhaps you can feel the aliveness in your hands, in your feet, in the whole body. The body is always here. Thoughts can be in the past or in the future, but the inner body is only ever sensed now. As you feel the inner body, you are drawn out of the mind's stories and into the field of presence. This presence is not something you have to create. It is what remains when you stop being completely absorbed in thinking. Even now, as these words are heard, there is a space in which the words appear. There is a silence underneath the words. Can you sense that? The silence is more fundamental than the words. In the same way, your essential nature is more fundamental than your thoughts, your emotions, your roles, your life situation. You are the space in which all of these come and go. When you no longer argue with reality, you are simply aligned with this space. You allow life to move through you without the added layer of mental resistance. This does not mean that difficult situations never arise. They may still arise. But how you meet them changes completely. Instead of a closed, tight no, there is an open, alert yes to the fact that this is what is here now. From that inner yes, you may take clear, firm action. You may say no to certain behaviors. You may leave certain environments. You may speak up. But the inner state remains rooted in presence, not in reactivity. This is especially important in relationships. Most human relationships are a field in which ego and pain body interact with each other. One person's pain body triggers the others. Words are spoken from unconsciousness. Old patterns repeat. There is blame, accusation, defensiveness, and both feel misunderstood. Perhaps you have noticed how often the mind says, "They should understand me. They should behave differently." The focus is almost always on the other person. The ego is very interested in what the other is doing wrong. It is far less interested in observing itself. In a conscious relationship, the focus shifts. When there is reactivity, you turn the light of attention inward. What is happening in me right now? What am I believing in this moment? What story about the other is causing this suffering? You feel the emotion in the body, you watch the thoughts, and you recognize, here is the pain body, here is the egoic story. As you stay present with what arises in you, you are no longer demanding that the other person fix your inner state. You are taking responsibility for your own consciousness. From this place, you may still communicate. You may say, when you spoke in that way, a lot of pain came up in me. You are not blaming. You are stating what is. You are sharing from awareness, not from attack. Sometimes the other person may also become more present in that shared field. At other times, they may not. They may remain identified with their own story. But even then, you do not have to enter the same unconscious pattern. You can remain present. You listen not only to their words, but also to the silence underneath. You sense the being behind the conditioned mind. This sensing is love. It is not an emotional high. It is a quiet recognition of shared being. Outwardly, you may choose to stay or to leave, but inwardly, you do not lose yourself in the drama. This is the beginning of true compassion. Compassion does not mean you tolerate harmful behavior. It means you see that behind all behavior, conscious or unconscious, there is the same essence, the same life, the same being, and you choose to respond from presence. Again and again, it comes back to this moment, this breath, this sense of being. If you look closely, you may notice that life never actually happens in the past or in the future. The past is a collection of thoughts appearing now. The future is a projection of thought appearing now. All your experiences have always unfolded in the now. There has never been a single moment that was not now. So when the mind argues with what is happening now, it is arguing with the only place where life actually is. This is why arguing with reality creates suffering. Reality, which is this moment, has an undeniable isness. It is already so. The thought that says it should not be so is always late. It arrives after the fact, so the ego is constantly in conflict with what already is. Notice the futility of this. If it has already happened, then on the level of form it is already true. You cannot make what has happened unhappen. You can learn from it, you can take action now, you can change direction, but you cannot undo the present moment. When you realize this deeply, something in you relaxes. The inner argument loses its energy. You step out of the story of should and into the simplicity of is. From this place, your actions are more intelligent, because they are aligned with reality, not with a mental image of how things ought to be right now. You are working with life, not against it. Surrender, then, is not weakness. It is a profound alignment with the intelligence of the present moment. This intelligence is not the mind's cleverness. It is the natural unfolding of life itself. You are a part of that unfolding, not separate from it. When you are present, you may find that the right words come when needed. The right actions arise, not from anxious thinking, but from a quiet inner knowing. This knowing comes only when there is space. If the mind is too noisy, you cannot hear it. So again, we return to silence. Feel the inner body, sense the aliveness. Let thoughts pass by like clouds in the sky. You are the sky, not the clouds. Even this metaphor you do not need to hold on to. Just rest as the open awareness that is already here. Sometimes people ask, how do I stay in the now? The question itself comes from the mind. Presence does not need to stay. It is always here. What comes and goes is attention. Attention is often pulled into the mind stories. Then you feel lost in time. When you notice this, you gently bring attention back to what is here now. The breath, the inner body, the sounds. The noticing itself is already presence. There is no need to create a new struggle around being present. You simply notice when you have been absent and return again and again. Over time, this returning becomes more natural. The old habit of arguing with reality loses its power. The pain body is less often triggered. The gaps between thoughts grow wider, and in those gaps, you taste a quiet joy, not the joy of getting what you want, but the joy of simply being. This quiet joy is not dependent on conditions. It is the natural fragrance of presence. Even when there is physical pain or emotional challenge, this underlying stillness can remain. You may feel sadness on the surface, but deep down there is a lake of stillness. The sadness moves like a gentle wave on that lake. Because you are not identified with the wave, it can arise and pass without overwhelming you. This is the freedom that comes when you no longer argue with reality. Life continues to unfold. People come and go. Situations change, gain and loss, praise and blame, success and failure. These opposites are part of the world of form. They will always be there, but something in you no longer depends on them for a sense of self. You know yourself as the awareness in which all forms appear and disappear. This recognition is a awakening. Awakening is not a special state that only a few can reach. It is the simple recognition of what has always been here in the background of your experience. The silent presence that has been with you in every moment of your life. Even in your most unconscious moments, it was there. Now it comes to the foreground. You notice it. You rest in it. And from this resting, your outer life gradually becomes a reflection of this inner stillness. Not because you force it, but because you are no longer acting out of unconscious patterns to the same degree. You may find that you are drawn to simpler things, to silence, to nature, to genuine connection rather than drama. You may find that you need less in order to feel complete, because you are discovering that completeness was never in things, it was in being. As we come towards the end of these words, notice that presence does not end. Words have a beginning and an end. Thoughts have a beginning and an end. This session will end. But the now does not end. The now is not a moment between past and future. It is the timeless dimension in which time appears. You are that. Just rest for a few moments in simple awareness. No need to do anything, no need to achieve anything. Let everything be as it is, the body, the mind, the surroundings, all allowed. Notice the peace that is already here when nothing is resisted. Even if the mind says, I don't feel peaceful, that too is simply a thought arising in the vastness of awareness. You are the vastness, not the thought. Let this understanding not remain only as a concept. Feel it. Sense the spaciousness in which this very moment unfolds. Here there is no argument with reality. There is just this being, still, quiet, alive.